UP Cell Biological Society proudly presents Bioindustrial Revolution, Envisioning Food Sustainability through Cellular Agriculture, in sponsorship with Cellular Association of Biology Students Incorporated, UP Environment and Tourism Society, UP Physics Association,
in partnership with Adamson University Biology Society, Biology Major Student Society, Batangas State University, Isabela State University Biological Society, UP Green League Incorporated. Special thanks to Bicol University Symbiosis, Calika San Pablo, Movement Expert Society, UPLB DOST Scholar Society, and UANT USG Research Development Committee. We would also like to take this opportunity to remind all our Filipino audience to register to vote, as the Comelec Voters Registration resumes on October 11, 2021 until October 30, 2021.
Greetings! We hope everyone is safe and having a great day. Today, the revolution begins. The question is, are you up to play your part? This is a venture you surely wouldn't want to miss. Get ready, because we are officially starting our adventure as we witness the emergence of a new era. I am Angelo Linco.
And I am Amy Letonia.
And we are your hosts. This is Bioindustrial Revolution, Envisioning Food Sustainability through Cellular Agriculture.
For 31 years, the UP Cell Biological Society has been continuously aiming to stimulate awareness and enthusiasm in cell biology. This year, the organization dives into the science of cellular agriculture. But first, I'd like to ask, what is cellular agriculture nga ba, Angelo?
Kung bahala sa'yo, Amy. To give a brief context, cellular agriculture is a specialized field of industrial biotechnology. It employs techniques used in tissue engineering, molecular biology, and synthetic biology, making sustainable production of edible meat and protein products and the manufacturing of materials possible. So you see, cellular agriculture addresses the issues posed by conventional agriculture around the world, such as food insecurity and even animal harming that is detrimental to the environment because of pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and the inefficient use of land, water, and energy resources.
Wow! So you mean to say ganun kalawak ang potential future ng cellular agriculture?
Tama ka dyan, Amy. It kinda makes you think, ano pa kayang possible nating magagawa with this technology?
Exactly, Angelo. That is also what I'm thinking about, very in line with the title, Bioindustrial Revolution, because it seems like it really introduces us to a new era of farming and animal husbandry through biotechnology.
Sobrang interesting naman talaga nun. Medyo nabitin na ako eh. Parang gusto ko pa makarinig ng more infos about cellular agriculture.
Are you excited, Angelo?
Super excited na ako, Amy.
Me too. I'm sure excited na rin ang ating mga viewers to hear from our speaker for today.
That's for sure. In the meantime, we would like to thank once again our sponsors and partners for this event. Bioindustrial Revolution is in sponsorship with Cebu Association of Biology Students Incorporated, UP Environment and Tourism Society, UP Physics Association, in partnership with Adamson University Biology Society, Biology Major Student Society, Batangas State University, Isabela State University Biological Society, UP Green League Incorporated. Special thanks to Bicol University Symbiosis, Calika San Pablo, Movement Expert Society, UPLBDOST Scholar Society, and UANP USG Research Development Committee.
Ayan, with that, I would like to ask you, Angelo, ready ka na ba?
Ready na, Amy.
Ang audience kaya natin, ready na kaya sila for this event?
Why don't we ask them?
That is right. May we see some heart reacts from both our Zoom and Facebook Live? If you guys are really ready, send heart reacts.
Ayan, wow, ang dami, panalo.
It looks like ready na rin sila, Angelo. Huwag na natin itong patagalin pa. Let's call on our incumbent president, Mr. Raynon RBT Lyrit, to give us his opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Angelo and Amy, for graciously introducing me to formally open today's program. I am Raynon R. Villayri, the incumbent president of the UP-Cell Biological Society. The UP-Cell Biological Society is an academic organization composed of biology students at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Today marks the opening of our Exhibit Week 2021 with the theme Bioindustrial Revolution, Envisioning Food Sustainability through Cellular Agriculture. Exhibit Week 2021 comprises an infographic series, a quiz contest exclusive to local colleges and state universities across the Philippines, and of course, this two-part Bio-Symposia. However, what you will be witnessing is not just a webinar that talks about cellular agriculture and other agricultural advancements here in the Philippines, but also a continuation of the organization's 31 years of commitment to serving the Filipino people by unraveling breakthroughs in the sciences with the highest and utmost priority to the specific field we are promoting, the cell and molecular biology. We hope that through this two-day discussion, you get valuable insights about cellular agriculture and its potential to be an alternative farming system towards envisaging a food future for the next generations. Needless to say, the path towards understanding cellular agriculture could be met with cynicism and skepticism, as this is a relatively new endeavor in the sciences. Regardless, we want today's symposium to be an open discussion and see how cellular agriculture initiatives have been implemented and become successful in other nations, so that as Filipinos, we could potentially reflect and assess on how we could clamor for a more sustainable food production system in our own nation, taking into account that it should still be inclusive to our farmers who make the majority of our population. Again, thank you very much, and I sincerely hope you all the best.
RV. What a great way to start off our event, right?
That's right. Of course, we would also like to hear our audience's thoughts. If there's anything that you'd like to share or kahit any manifestations lang sa social media accounts nyo, feel free to use our official hashtags, #Rebiolution and #CellularAgriculture. Pwede nyo rin kami i-tag or i-mention. So, official social media accounts namin, UP-Cell Biological Society on Facebook, at UP-Cells on Twitter, and at the UP-Cells on Instagram.
And before we start our Bio-Symposia, a reminder to please key in your questions, clarifications, and or comments for our speaker in the following menti.com code using the format flashed on the screen. Kindly follow our format, name and affiliation, followed by a question, clarification, and or comment. Send heart reacts po tayo kung naiintindihan.
Ayan, I think naiintindihan naman nila. And with that, let's now move forward to our Bio-Symposia number 1. Our speaker for today will introduce us to food by cell culture, cellular agriculture initiatives. He took his PhD in chemistry at Oxford University, where he worked on nanofabrication, the study of manipulating atoms and molecules as his field of interest. He worked as a postdoctoral research staff in Tohoku University in year 2010 up to year 2012, and as a research scientist for Systems Engineering Laboratory, Toshiba Research and Development Center from October 2012 to December 2014. He's the CEO and the founder of IntegriCulture Incorporated, a company that aims to develop large-scale cell culture technology that ultimately leads to increased revenue. Let us all give a warm welcome to Dr. Yuki Hanyu.
It's an honor to be invited to this UP event. Today I'm talking about the nascent field of cellular agriculture and food production by cell culture technology. So just a quick introduction. I'm the founder of the Shojin Meat Project, an open source cultured meat hobbyist club, as well as the CEO of IntegriCulture Company, which is a spin-off from the Shojin Meat Project. On the personal note, I'm under anime overdose. And yeah, I started all these endeavors in cellular agriculture just because they appear in science fiction anime. But if you think about why certain technologies appear in science fiction and people think it's cool, I think that is because we as humans think that we actually need that technology. So that's the reason why we think it's cool, and that's why it appears in science fiction. So cellular agriculture appearing in science fiction is not far off from what the world actually needs, I think. Just a quick introduction to the organizations involved. So the endeavors in cellular agriculture started with the Shojin Meat Project, which is a citizen science community, and out of which IntegriCulture Company, which is a for-profit startup, spun off. The Shojin Meat Project is involved in democratization of cellular agriculture by developing open source DIY cultured meat, as well as engaging in public communication by educating kids how to culture cells, providing artists with specialist information so that they can come up with works of fiction with more scientific accuracy. And it's involved in a whole range of other activities. So it's basically anyone who's interested in cellular agriculture, just come and gather and do something. IntegriCulture Company is a spin-off that came out of the Shojin Meat Project. So initially, the Shojin Meat Project has been developing ultra low-cost cell culture methodology, and IntegriCulture Company is taking that to industrial scale. So far, it has demonstrated cell cultured foie gras, as well as cheap growth factor production. And the pictures on the right-hand side are the actual equipment used by IntegriCulture Company to develop cellular agriculture products. So the cellular agriculture the word that I have been using repeatedly. It is a production of agricultural products by the use of cell culture technology. So the technology of cell culture has been developed mainly in medicine, but it's now being used for agricultural applications. And so what are the possible products out of cellular agriculture? So they're divided into acellular products and cellular products, as you can see on the left-hand side and right-hand side. So acellular products are based on genetically modified yeast or bacteria producing casein, gelatin, and such and those proteins. So it's kind of like it's one of the most established case of acellular products is probably insulin for diabetes. So in this product, cells are cultured, or better, probably in this case, better say the bacteria and yeast are cultured to produce materials that we want. But the main shot of cellular agriculture comes mainly from the products on the right-hand side, the cellular products, where the cultured cells themselves become the product. That includes cell-cultured meat, cell-cultured leather, cell-cultured fur, wood, offal, and such. So the cell-cultured meat, it uses cells taken from live animals, proliferated in bioreactors using culture medium. So conceptually, it's quite simple. And the idea has been around from long ago, in very early works of science fiction, in like late in the end of 19th century. I mainly learned about this subject probably from Doraemon manga. So this piece is published in 1981. So quite a while ago, like 40 years ago. So in this manga, Doraemon returns from the future on a time machine and brings back something called free hamburger maker that produces artificial meat by culturing chlorella from air and water. And this is what's actually being done to, or at least being attempted for production of cellular agriculture. So air, water, and sunlight cultures chlorella turned into culture medium, which is used to grow meat. Some components could be used directly from chlorella into meat. And the reason why cell-cultured meat has been anticipated as a sustainable source of protein is found in its intrinsic energy conversion efficiency. If you look at conventional meat, it basically takes the upper route, whereas cell-cultured meat has a potential to take the lower route. If you look at the upper route, only 4% of the energy or calories are converted from grass to meat. On top of that, grass harvests the sunlight at only less than 0.1% efficiency because they happen mostly in unregulated manner. But if you culture microalgae under controlled manner, or if we could use artificial leaf or artificial photosynthesis, the efficiency could reach 10%. That can be converted into culture medium matter, very high efficiency, which then can be further converted to meat by cell culture. That makes the whole process more than hundreds to 1,000 times more efficient compared to the conventional meat. However, we have to be careful about the actual conversion efficiency as of happening now, because most of the culture medium in the market today is produced from plants or crops. So unless we have to, cell culture is 10 times more, about roughly 10 times more efficient compared to the growing animals. But most of the energy saving actually comes from the source of culture medium. So, and in fact, taking the microalgae route to culture medium is an active research field now. Another way to look at cellular agriculture is the use of is basically a novel engineering materials. So we know that metals are made from ore, plastics are made from petroleum. So tissues and meat, they can be manufactured from live cells. So in this case, live cells become the raw material for some engineered products. So that sort of expands the horizon of what we can do with in terms of technology. So plant animal parts as food we can do by cell culture. Organs for transplant, that's another engineering target. We could even go for a seamless jointless wooden skyscraper as a product of cell culture. and so are cyborg parts. So things we cannot make now, but with cellular agriculture, using live cells as engineering materials, these could become a possibility. But then we have to do some reality check or face the reality. Cell culture is an incredibly expensive technology, at least for now. This is a demonstration by Professor Mark Post in University of Maastricht, Netherlands. He did a demonstration of cell cultured meat in 2013 at a cost of $325,000 for just one burger. That's probably not something you want to pay at a supermarket to buy meat for today's dinner. So we have to overcome some technological hurdles, and that includes inexpensive culture medium, scaling and automation, and also the added value and consumer acceptance, which means rather than just a thick slurry of cells, consumers would probably want proper block meat that is tasty and enjoyable. So first of all, on the inexpensive media side, one of the biggest problems of cell culture is that culture medium being very expensive, resulting in this bottlenecks in cellular agriculture. And so what is culture medium made of? So it is basically made of basal medium, fetal bovine serum or serum components, and some signaling compounds. Basal medium contains sugar, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, and those bulk nutrients. Fetal bovine serum contains albumin, buffer, insulin, transferrin, and such. These are typical. These are the compounds found in blood components. And on top of that, some cases it's needed, in some cases it's not. Depending on the types of cell you want to culture, it may also need growth factors. And these signal compounds basically tells the cells to multiply. And these are also called hormones, growth factors, endocrine factors, cytokines, and such. And that could also tell the cells to not just grow, but differentiate, gather, or even die. And they tend to be active at nanogram per liter concentration. So it's signal compounds you need only in very tiny amount, but they are also very, very expensive compounds. For example, the FGF2 costs about $2 million per gram. TGF beta costs $81 million per gram. But probably using this kind of compounds for food is not a good idea, at least from economic point of view. But whatever. What if we use all these compounds to culture cells using conventional methods? So if you want to culture some standard cells, it takes about $5,000 to culture 100 grams of cells. So if you are kind of like a vegan and you want to culture cells using completely animal-free components, then you would probably need some animal-free medium. An essential 8 medium is one of such. But if you use that, it takes about $15,000 to culture 100 grams of cells. So what if we want to culture some of the specialty cells, like liver cells and iPSCs? So for liver cells, you need HGF, but it's a very, very expensive compound, and you end up with $90,000 per 100 grams of cells. When it comes to iPSCs, it goes well beyond $300,000. It's very, very expensive. And this is also the reason why regenerative medicine is hitting a brick wall. It's just too expensive for use even as for medicine. What exactly is making this so expensive has been analyzed by Good Food Institute, taking the use of E8 medium as an example. So if you look carefully, or you don't even have to look at it carefully, but you immediately spot that FGF2, TGF-beta, these signal compounds are taking more than 95% of the whole cost. So probably the first thing to do, making this cheaper is probably the way. And that's being done, sort of done by the industry. By a startup called Future Fields, they are considering the use of insects to produce FGF2 much cheaper compared to conventional methods. There's another approach taken by a company called Aleph Farms in Israel. They are using multiple types of cells to produce signal compounds needed to culture muscle cells. IntegriCulture company is also taking a similar approach as Aleph Farms. So in IntegriCulture's case, they use a bioreactor consisting of feeder bioreactors and the target cell bioreactor. The feeder bioreactors contain organ cells that produce growth factors, and the growth factors flow into the target cell bioreactor on the circulating culture medium. This is a mimicry of what's happening in natural systems or natural bodies of cow, fish, or even human. So if you look at these bodies, the cells multiply and proliferate every day, but obviously without relying on pharmacies to buy those like $2 million per gram growth factor and inject into yourself. And you don't have to do that because those natural systems produce growth factors for themselves in their body organs. This system basically mimics that. So you don't have to add anything from outside. Then, with the problem of signal compounds or growth factors being solved, then you look at how the cells could be cultured cheaply. And one thing that's effective is moving from biopharma grade to food grade materials. So if you use conventional culture systems like DMEM basal medium produced in biopharma grade, that's about $12 per liter. But obviously, if you go to supermarkets, $12 per liter is found probably only for like alcoholic drinks, at least not for soft drinks. And if you look at what's actually in the basal medium, sugar, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, you would find them in things like Gatorade, Powerade, or those sports drinks. And in fact, we can culture cells using sports drinks. So in this experiment, we've purchased multiple brands of sports drinks from a street vending machine ubiquitous in Japan. And we found that one of the brands actually can replace basal medium. And that's how Shojin Meat project is culturing cells at home to make basically DIY cultured meat. On the industry side, the IntegriCulture company is also working to further reduce the cost of basal medium. So 2021 medium 1.0, all components are assembled from food additives or materials purchased at food grade. But then for 23 and 25, the company is trying to use digestive yeast and algae or microalgae to make the whole thing even cheaper and more ecologically sustainable. With all these efforts combined, the company is reducing the cost of culturing cells and at the same time scaling cell culture at the trajectory shown on the right. So every time the production volume expands by 10 to 50 times, the cost of cell culture goes down by um, goes down by 1/10, and by 25, the company expects to culture cells at $3.5 per 100 grams. But if you just culture cells, what you get is a slurry of cells. But what consumers want is probably the block meat. So if you want just sausages and burgers, slurry you can do with slurry of cells. But if you want to eat bacon and steak, then we would probably need some more advanced tissue engineering techniques originally developed in regenerative medicine. Now, to do that, one way of giving texture and structure to the aggregate of cultured cells is the use of cellular scaffold. A cellular scaffold looks like a sponge on the left, and that gives cells to attach themselves to. So it basically provides the housing for cells. Cellular scaffold also have, if you make the cellular scaffold from edible materials, it can be used to basically make the bulk part of the cell culture meat product. It can give texture as well as shapes measured in millimeters or even centimeters. Another way of giving shape is the use of 3D printing. In this case, the cellular scaffold could also be used to produce cellular ink for the 3D printer. Although 3D printing has got an inherent issue in scalability, but this scalability issue could also be solved by a technique called extrusion. But ultimately, if you want to culture, if you want to produce real steak, that's molecularly indistinguishable from conventional meat, you would probably want to do a whole tissue culture without cellular scaffold. So in this case, you will be culturing not just cells, but you are doing a whole tissue culture. This is a technology under development, and whole tissue culture would produce the ultimate cell cultured meat that you may find in science fiction, in works of science fiction. And the technology is heading toward there. So this summarizes the technologies applied to give cell cultured meat some texture. So without, if you just culture cells, that would be a cell paste. But if you use cellular scaffold or 3D printing and such, you get something like a molded meat. But if you want to produce the actual functional living tissue indistinguishable from conventional meat, you need to do vascularization, which is like a construction of blood vessels. And that's also a big target for regenerative medicine. So once you have the technology to make cell culture meat, then becomes a question of then you get issues from non-science from aspects outside science, such as the food safety, legality, what to do with what should traditional farmers do, and how consumers react and such. And this so that takes a process called like regulatory actions, or more broadly speaking, rule-making activities to basically accept cellular agriculture or cell culture meat to a society as a whole. In case of Japan, there has been active roundtable discussion going on with participants from a wide spectrum of stakeholders. including the general public, food companies, academics, policymakers, and regulators, and such. So they have been actively researching this topic, and came up with policy advice that can be used by stakeholders on different fronts, ranging from traditional farmers to regulators to policymakers to food companies to startups. This policy advice includes the rough schematics, rough schemes on cell licensing and positions that big companies should take, and also how consumer communication should be done. So as the whole cellular agriculture and cell cultured meat industry becomes a reality, for some people, it's possible to have a career in this sector becomes a valid question. So if you are for science and technology career, bioprocess engineering, cell physiology, and broader animal cell culture, tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, these specialties are needed in cellular agriculture industry. And to be honest, the whole industry is in severe shortage of these science and technology talents, especially bioprocess engineering. So if you happen to be in this discipline, you have a very high chance of getting into cellular agriculture sector. If you are on humanity and arts career, most positions typically found in food companies are also present in cellular agriculture companies that are administration, PR, product development, management, and such. So if you aspire to go this path, it probably helps to start with interns of non-profits, such as in New Harvest, GFI, Cellular Agriculture Australia, and such. And to increase the chance of getting into that positions, probably it helps to start making footprints to make yourself visible and stand out. That will be a personal blog or starting a community for discussion so that people can find you. But then, so the technology is there. It's ready to sell. People accept it, but to solve the problem of food, you probably need this in thousands of tons or even millions of tons. And in fact, you need 200 million tons of meat to solve the world protein problem. But if you look at conventional large scale cell culture, this is what you get. It's just not enough. It's not even 10 kilograms. You need much higher scale. So that's where the process needs a fundamental redesign, because conventionally the process of cell culture is being optimized for laboratories, but you have to redesign the whole process to industrial scale, so the production becomes like $2 per kilogram. That will be, you will be moving away from labs and hospitals to brewery and petrochemical complexes. So, but luckily, that is under development. So there are methods known to best fit laboratory scale to industrial scale. And the whole industry is moving from this kind of bench scale methods to more industrial scale methods, such as the use of hollow fibers. And once that happens, you would probably start moving from biochemistry or cell physiology to something more like a chemical engineering or plant engineering. And what does plant engineering looks like? And in this kind of in this sector, you start looking at sterilization method and frequency, mixing method, how the temperature control, how often the filter is cleaned, what's the reliability, how often does it fail, pipeline diameter and flow rate. You start thinking about this kind of things, which you wouldn't probably think in conventional cell physiology being worked out at biochemistry laboratories. But nonetheless, that's already under initial studies. In this white paper produced by Good Food Institute, it describes the different methods of operating a bioreactor to calculate the final cost of cell culture. So production method does make a difference. And so with that in mind, different companies are imagining what the actual cell culture meat plant looks like. So future meat technologies, MeatTech 3D, Meatable, each of them have different versions of future visions for their cell cultured meat factory. But one thing that is common is that you probably need a big bioreactor there. So that was speculative, and that's what actually came out. So that's one by Eat Just in US and Singapore, and the left bottom is by Future Meat Technologies in Israel. Bottom right is from IntegriCulture company. So one thing that is common is, yeah, there are bioreactors, and they look very silver rather than green or red. So that's another picture of speculative future large-scale cell culture facility. So in this case, myoblast or muscle cells are grown at a 200-ton scale in a facility that's similar to beer brewery. But that would produce only a slurry of cells. So you probably need to give them a shape by doing tissue culture rather than just cell culture. And this picture sort of speculatively describes how that tissue culture might be. So it uses single-use culture bags with steak or actual meat tissue growing inside. And once it's filled up, it's ready to ship. But then once we have cell culture meat industry at a scale, then obviously people start wondering these kind of questions. Would vegetarians eat it? Is it halal? Has animal welfare? Will consumers accept them? And whatever, is it tasty? Or that sort of questions. Although there are different answers to different questions here, especially for some somewhat polarizing issues like animal welfare and religions. One thing we should probably be aware is that ethical landscape may change. So, for example, animal experimentation and Japanese whaling and Chinese cat and dog consumption often comes under fire in the so-called Western world. But they still eat. But those Western people in Western world also eat meat. So where does this double standard come from? But it's mainly because those cats and dog consumption, whale and animal experimentation, and these things are remote things for those protesters in the Western world. But that would mean, what if on 2040, when meat alternatives, it could be a plant-based meat or cultured meat or even insect. Anyway, about 30% of the whole population doesn't eat conventional meat anymore. Then how would they react to the remaining 70% of the people who would still eat meat? Would that be uncontrollable hate campaign against traditional farmers, or some trade ban of conventional meat due to animal cruelty over World Trade Organization? Who knows? And what's even more uncertain is what happens after that. So first generation chooses cell-based meat on animal welfare or environmental reasons, but on generation 2, they would eat cultured meat just because they're cheap. And by that time, all animals are for pets or labor or like wild animals and such. So in a way, according to their vocabulary, animals are added to their circle of friends. Then you get generation 3. So what would generation 3 people think if they look at this piece of meat? Well, for them, meat appears as something very grotesque, because that would remind them of pain, wound, and death and such. So whether it's cultured meat or real meat, or conventional meat, it just doesn't matter. The appearance of meat is already disgusting to them. So what sort of product or protein product becomes popular in that age? It could be some bland, featureless protein bar or something. Well, let's see what happens. But on the bright side, you may start seeing the world food problem being solved, and farming and food production becoming much more ecological, with short food miles and more efficient ways of producing food. So this is one possible scenery. Or you could start seeing something like microalgae culture on ocean surface. So the microalgae is being hydrolyzed to be converted to basal medium for cell culture of seafood, or it could be cell culture of beef, pork, or whatever. But you can use the ocean surface as the source of energy and food. So for countries like Japan, Philippines, or even Singapore, where they have relatively little land but lots of ocean space, this technology could work positively for the food security of the nation. Or you could take the whole thing to space, like on Mars. So that's a speculative Martian food production facility. Or you could take this to orbital zero gravity environments to build something like that. Well, I've seen something like that in one of those Gundam anime series, so that millions of people living in space can get their food from. Here, what you are seeing is basically a combination of cellular agriculture with other technologies found in like space industry or like ocean engineering and such. So combination of cellular agriculture with other technologies have also become quite key in predicting what is to come. And one possibility is that cost of DNA synthesis coming down, and also the cost of cell culture coming down thanks to cellular agriculture. So what you get is probably you can edit DNA cheaply, or even write DNA from scratch at home, and culture the cells and multiply the number of cells a million times. This concept is already online, and there's a project called DIY insulin, where you make your own, where diabetics can grow their own insulin at home. That sort of movement could make what's shown here actual reality of like DNA source code leaks to BitTorrent or Reddit or 4chan or whatever, whereas the DNA sequence of the peptide drug leaks out from a pharmaceutical company, posted on 4chan or BitTorrent or whatever. People download that DNA code and synthesize the DNA, culture the cells containing that synthesized DNA to make the drug at home. Well, it's a big problem for pharmaceutical companies, but it could save lives of poor people. Anyway, with combining cellular agriculture with other technologies, that further expands the horizon of what may come in the future. So it could be something like that, like vast land reverted to nature as we move agriculture indoors. You could also get like artificial photosynthesis going on, and by that time, cellular agriculture becomes just another form of manufacturing industry. And you could potentially end up with this kind of really sci-fi scenery of like solar punk, of like zero footprint vertical farms and community bioreactors and such. Well, I like this kind of green sci-fi future, but I think different people have got different dreams of a future. Well, this is another version of the future I want to see. So this kind of very casual settings. So like a younger sister going for a school trip to the Earth, brings back cells from cells of wagyu, so that she can grow wagyu steaks at home on Mars. And if you want to look at what cell cultured meat factory actually looks like on the one-to-one scale, there's actually we've constructed a virtual reality version of cell cultured meat facility on VR chat. So if you happen to have this kind of Oculus or some VR head mount display, you could pay a visit to there. So here are the key takeaways. Well, cellular agriculture is not just about cell cultured meat. It could be more. Cell cultured meat needs to be cheaper and bigger to make it to be realistic. And cell culture can be cheap enough to do it at home. So you could even do it yourself. Although at the end, what you want is meat. So inexpensive cell culture must be followed by actual tissue culture, because that's becoming very close to reality. Careers in cellular agriculture is a real option now. So you could find jobs in there. But at the same time, social norms may change due to cellular agriculture, and more change could come combined with other technologies. So yeah, thank you for listening. Goodbye. And and the question section will continue after this.
Thank you, Dr. Yuki Hanyu, for that very informative discussion on the introduction to cell agriculture. I am quite amused on how science fiction could actually come to life.
I agree with you, Angelo. I'm sure that talk also boggled the minds of our audience. So moving on to our live open forum, we are again flashing the format for the questions you have for Dr. Yuki Hanyu. You may now submit them through menti.com using the code on your screens. I think we have allotted the maximum of 20 minutes for this live open forum. So I hope you guys can address your questions now. And the technical committee will just be the one responsible for the time remaining for our open live forum. So while waiting for the questions, I'd also like to share my personal takeaways or insights from Dr. Yuki's discussion. First, I got so many ideas running through my mind because he has provided us with a very detailed discussion pertaining to cellular agriculture, from an economic point of view to socio-cultural implications and other different perceptions about the topic. This has personally given me a glimpse of what our possible future would look like. You know what? I'm really interested in working in cellular agriculture because as an animal lover, this gave me the hope of eating meat without having the feeling of guilt and empathy for animals.
Yes, I totally agree, Amy. And also, as a BS biology student, I never thought of making a DIY biotechnology products at the comfort of my home, especially that we are currently experiencing a pandemic right now. So this is really a revolutionary movement.
True, Angelo. Also, I'm so much interested in working in the field of cellular agriculture because this can really be a possible solution in addressing such economic challenges like food insecurity that we have today.
Unfortunately, due to our unprecedented circumstances, Dr. Yuki Hanyu will not be able to join us today for our live open forum. However, we will be recording this symposium and inject his video recording answering your queries. Please watch this.
Again, thank you very much, Dr. Hanyu, for affirming the invitation as one of our resources speaker for this webinar. Now, let me start this segment by asking the first question from Rain Arado of UPLB CAPS. He asks, alternative proteins have recently been commercialized. How can cellular agriculture aid or assist in the palatability of plant-based meat or alternative protein?
The issue with plant-based meat is well, there are a number of issues, but one is the actual fat taste because it's after all made with plants, and which tastes differently from meat. But if hybrid product is one option. So basically, mixing cell cultured fat into plant-based meat basically makes plant-based meat much tastier.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanyu, for that answer. Now, Rain has a follow-up question. He says, in the case of large-scale productions of any cell agri products, will there be any byproducts that would create environmental or health concerns? If so, what would be its or their implications?
Yeah. So for any industrial process, there's always some byproduct. In case of cellular agriculture, that will be the metabolites like ammonia and lactate. Obviously, that's produced in rather large quantities. So if you basically dump it straight into like river or something, that causes excessive nutrition in river, which probably leads to microalgae boom or stuff like that. So direct dumping of waste culture medium would cause environmental concerns. So, but that's also a quite costly thing to throw out any used medium. So, cell culture medium recycling system is quite crucial in this whole industry.
Wow, that's a very insightful answer, Dr. Hanyu. So let me proceed to the next question asked by Cromwell Cruz of ISU Biosoc. Isn't there an issue of a patent landscape for cultured meat which disincentivizes consumption of impoverished people and is used by underfunded science researchers?
Yeah, actually, this is a real risk, and there are scientists who warned about this. It's basically a biopharma model that caused the lawsuit over HIV drugs in the late 90s. So actually, I started from Shojin Meat project with this kind of possibility in mind. So if those citizen scientists develop a DIY cell culture and put it online, basically it makes it impossible to patent that. So that's one way to do it. So like DIY bio, putting things online, working as a what is it, like roadblock for against excessive IP introduction.
So for the fourth question, this is from Carl Iverson Estravilla from Batangas State University Biology Majors Students Society. He asks, can cellular agriculture provide artificial organs?
The answer is yes, but it needs some technological progress. So cellular agriculture to produce cells cheaply in large quantities, yes, that's under development. But to make organs, you have to go a step further. That is tissue engineering and possibly whole tissue culture. And that's currently being intensively researched in regenerative medicine. So that's underway. But the implication is actually quite big because currently the artificial organs, even the smallest ones, costs like $1 million or even $2 million. There was a case in Japan when iPSCs were used to make cell cultured cornea to basically restore the vision. But that costed about $1.5 million, which is quite impractical. But if cellular agriculture becomes a common thing, then you can produce the whole liver under $1 or so. So which obviously has got a positive impact on regenerative medicine.
Wow, from that answer, I think we can really look forward to more advancements in this specific field of science. Okay, so we have our last question here from Menti. It's from I am Oscar Magbanwa Jr. from University of Southern Mindanao. He asks, can cellular agriculture be applicable for the meat of rabbits as a substitute for pork meat?
Um, yeah, the answer is yes. The cellular agriculture, it's basically species blind, so it can be applied for any sort of species, including rabbits. But it also includes things like elephants, tigers, and some the whales, and whatever species that whatever species that's hard to eat or have never eaten before. There's even a startup company in Australia that look at this. It's called BioFoods. Their argument is that pork, chicken, beef, those things were domesticated, not just because they were tasty, but because the animals were domesticatable. So, which means if there could be some wild species that cannot be domesticated, but actually taste nice. And cellular agriculture makes it an option to eat them without killing them.
Wow,
So,
Dr. Hanyu, that's a very informative answer that you just gave. So I actually have another question as well. So upon listening to your presentation a while ago, you have mentioned that in your project in the Sojan Meat and IntegriCulture
mm,
company, you use alternative resources, right? Like reagents from more cost efficient
mm,
products in producing your cell-based products. So with
yeah.
this, do you still use the same equipment, like for example, the bioreactor? So how do you culture your products in your company? If it's share a little bit.
Yeah. So the existing bioreactors are mostly existing bioreactors on the market is mainly used for like biopharma applications, especially the ones for animal cell culture. Um, so one option is just use the biopharma grade bioreactors, but that will be too expensive. So it's actually better to develop from scratch, and that's what we are trying to do, as well as other bioreactor companies, because they also know that the specifications will be different for cellular agriculture.
Oh, I see, Dr. Hanyu. I'm actually quite curious if you have tried eating your products already, since you're trying to produce food out of cell cultures. Have you also tried it already? Like
Yeah. So
the
is,
hamburger thing that happened during the 2013 conference.
yeah, have
Um,
I tasted? Yes, I have, and filmed myself and put it online. Yeah,
mm,
and one of the past attempts, I basically made an imitation, basically replicated cell cultured meat product appearing in anime. So I basically did that, filmed myself, put it online, and even did a presentation in someone's anime convention event.
oh, I see. So actually, a lot of audience a while ago were very interested on how, just like what I've said before, how you were inspired by Doraemon. Because actually, we ourselves like to watch anime as well, and we haven't come to that point where animes or the dramas that we're watching at the moment gave us inspiration to do a breakthrough as much as what you did.
Now, same
So
thing
it's
has
really.
already happened with Star Trek and Star Wars and those things in Silicon
Mm,
Valley. So yeah, same thing.
yes, yes, doctor. So how about my other org mates here? Do you have questions so that we can make use of the time that we have?
Yes, actually, Princess, I also have a question to Dr. Hanyu.
Mm.
You mentioned that if you've already tasted products out of the processes involving cellular agriculture,
Mm.
and as someone who have only tasted meat from the actual animals, I'd like to ask, are there any differences with the taste or any immediate differences you could pinpoint upon tasting products out of cellular agriculture, or is it hardly recognizable?
Well, it all depends on how you cook it, actually, because probably you don't eat meat like completely raw. except a few, like there may be a few exceptions, but you don't normally do that. And the cell cultured meat at the moment is not a complete replication of the existing meat because we don't have the tissue engineering technology yet. So it's probably better called some animal cell based product, which may or may not be meat. And when we did our cell culture, the foie gras, it's basically fat-loaded liver cells, but our cell cultured version didn't have any blood component or like fibrous component. That obviously results in some like taste, flavor difference and texture difference. And then it depends on the one who tastes or cooks. But one chef said that it's actually tastier than the existing conventional foie gras because it doesn't have any blood taste.
Oh, so you mean to say that there's a difference with when it comes to the texture of the meat you are eating? Am I right?
Because the existing cell cultured meat, because we don't have the full tissue engineering technology, it doesn't have the fiber. It's, after all, a slurry of cells at the moment, which is probably not the same as conventional meat. But once the technology develops and matures, and then we become able to make the actual complete tissue-based meat, then it's possible to make the flavor completely indistinguishable.
Wow, that really makes me feel excited about the future of science because if we get to face that kind of development and get to taste a meat out of cellular products that have barely recognizable differences, it would be really an exciting time for us to live in this kind of world where science is at its peak. Really exciting to be perfectly honest. I feel so excited for the developments that we are facing right now in terms of science.
Yeah, if that becomes possible, then it also becomes possible to make organs for transplant.
Yes, and that's kind of an application that I wasn't able to think of. Like when we talk about cellular agriculture, all I think of are the products that we could eat. But from the questions raised earlier, it's actually possible that it's also helpful in other fields such as medicine. What do you think, Shanna and Princess? Are you also excited about the things we are hearing from Dr. Hanyu right now?
Yes, we are very, very excited. And this is really interesting for me because discussing into the introduction to cellular agriculture is here in the Philippines is not yet very familiar to us, especially in the scientific community. And it's really interesting for us biology students, especially us UP Cell Biological Society, because as we've said, we feel like cellular agriculture is something of a turning point in the science of biotechnology. So thank you very much for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Han.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about cell agriculture here as well.
It's just a bit unfortunate that we weren't able to have you come over when there were still other participants, but still, if we could share with you the recording of the presentation, the people who watch it were really excited about cellular agriculture, and the people are really amazed because this is something that is not yet implemented here in our country, although we are a very agricultural country. Because I think there are also some I think when for the people, there are still some hesitancy when it comes to products produced from cellular cultures, and it's pretty understandable since there's still misinformation going everywhere. Is there anything you could comment regarding that? How misinformation could cast doubt among the people when it comes to innovations or whenever science explores something new?
Yeah, I think well, that kind of misunderstandings happen anyway. So what I think very important is that to make sure that those misunderstandings don't get codified into legislation or stuff like that.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with that. We're very thankful that we get to see a cellular agriculture at its positive light. That it's really an exciting innovation that we all should look forward to, and it is not something to be scared of. It's a wonderful innovation.
Yeah. So but one thing that could eke people out could be the possibility to make human meat actually. But even if that's possible, I think that pretty much the only negative use of human meat is just for like, harassment, probably. So yeah. So it depends on the use of the technology, but when it comes to cellular agriculture, even its worst possible application is not that harmful, at least scientifically. So it's more of an issue of how the business model is built around cellular agriculture, because then it could be very, very harmful, like excluding all farmers.
Princess, is there anything you want to say? We are so excited about what we've heard, and we're so inspired about what we learned from you, Dr. Hanyu.
I just wholeheartedly agree with everything that Dr. Hanyu shared to us, especially with what he said in his last response. At the moment, there is still hesitancies because if we really try to engage ourselves in cellular agriculture, which is, I think, on the positive note, is very helpful in sustaining our fundamental needs in the future. We must also need to make sure that farmers, right, and especially since Philippines is an agricultural country, they will still be given a chance to really do their jobs because, of course, it's their source of income, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think with all the ethical issues going around, I believe that there must always be a middle point, right? We should meet halfway. Science can be very helpful, but at the same time, if we don't use it properly, it can really be harmful. So yes, I hope that there will always be a balance in everything, so that everything will go smoothly. That's it. So that's all from me.
Thank you for that, Yuki Hanyu. Now we will proceed to the presentation of e-certificate to our speaker. The UP Cell Biological Society presents this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Yuki Hanyu for his invaluable contribution as a Bio-Symposia speaker in Bioindustrial Revolution, Envisioning Food Sustainability through Cellular Agriculture, given this 10th day of October 2021. Signed by the UP Cell Biological Society's President, Raynon RBT Lyrit, and the UP Cell Biological Society's Vice President and the Project Committee Head, Princess Amy R. Deliosa. Once again, thank you for a very insightful and informative talk, Dr. Yuki Hanyu.
Ayan, tapos na tayo sa first speaker for our first day of Bio-Symposia. Don't forget to share insights about it on social media and use the official hashtags #Revolution and #Cellular Agriculture.
Yes, that's right. Once again, Bioindustrial Revolution is in sponsorship with Cebu Association of Biology Students Incorporated, UP Environment and Tourism Society, UP Physics Association, in partnership with Adamson University Biology Society, Biology Major Student Society, Batangas State University, Isabela State University Biological Society, UP Green League Incorporated. Special thanks to Bicol University Symbiosis, Calica San Pablo, Movement Expert Society, UPLP DOST Scholar Society, and UANP USG Research Development Committee.
And we're done! Grabe, Amy, ang dami kong nalaman about cellular agriculture today.
Me too, Angelo. Listening to our speaker today really made me think about the rich potential ng cellular agriculture.
Right, Amy. Very interesting for me yung mga questions na nakita ko kanina sa ating menti.com.
Tama ka dyan, Angelo. It's always amusing to witness young minds formulate interesting questions talaga.
I agree. Though, medyo nakakabitin nga na introduction pa lang tayo today.
Don't worry, Angelo. This is not the end naman because we'll be back with more talks from more esteemed speakers on Saturday, October 16, 2021 for the second part of our Bio-Symposia.
For now, we would like to call on our incumbent Vice President and Project Committee Head, Ms. Princess Amy R. Deliosa, to give her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Angela and Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Princess Deliosa, the incumbent Vice President and Project Committee Head of the UP Cell Biological Society. So, wow, that's a very illuminating presentation from our resource speaker, Dr. Hanyu. So, on behalf of our organization, I would like to extend our genuine appreciation to everyone who was able to attend and finish our first day of Bio-Symposia, both in this meeting and in our Facebook live stream. It is an honor to share our organization's mission and vision. Since its inception 31 years ago, the UP SOS has been dedicated in promoting scientific, primarily biological knowledge to the general public. It is our responsibility as an academic body to aid in the development of the sprouting minds of our youth scientists. With that goal in mind, we chose this still nascent field of cellular agriculture as this exhibit week's topic. Going back to the presentation of Dr. Hanyu, he noted that there may come a time in the future that we may have to rely on these alternative food sources. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. With the depletion of agricultural and livestock products, as well as the occurrence of natural disasters, it is not difficult for us to recognize the importance of these cell-based products and utilize them to suffice our fundamental needs, but at a much lower cost, right? That's something that we could still work on. Hence, I am very grateful to learn how cellular agriculture can help us in preventing food insecurity. But do all these advancements have to happen in the future? I suppose we could get started right now by immersing ourselves in learning modern science and recent breakthroughs. We may even have a vital role to play in the scientific agenda, right? So I hope that at this time, the majority here is actually inspired to really research more, to dig deeper in our biological knowledge, to grab opportunities and collaborative works, and of course apply these information, these experiences in helping us have a better future. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Hanyu. Thank you to our sponsors and partners. And of course, thank you attendees for being with us in envisioning food sustainability through cellular agriculture. To end, we are the UP Cell Biological Society, helping the change in our future through science and virtue. See you on the second day of Bio-Symposia, October 16 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Philippine Standard Time. Hashtag Revolution and hashtag Cellular Agriculture.
Thank you for that speech, our Vice President and Project Committee Head, Ms. Princess.
To claim your e-certificates, further details will be discussed and provided next week after our Bio-Symposia Day 2 on Saturday. For now, may we request our Zoom participants turn on their cameras for the photo op. While we're waiting for everyone to open their cameras, we would like to encourage our attendees to use our official hashtags, hashtag Rebiolution and hashtag Cellular Agriculture in your social media accounts when sharing our event. And tag us too, UP Biological Society on Facebook, at UP on Twitter, and at the UP on Instagram. Ayan, since we have 5 panels placed randomly, kindly maintain your best smiles. Ayan, okay. First panel, 1, 2, 3, say Cell Agri.
Cell Agri.
Second panel, 1, 2, 3, say Cell Agri.
Cell Agri.
For our third panel, 1, 2, 3, say Cell Agri.
Cell Agri.
Fourth panel, 1, 2, 3, say Cell Agri.
Cell Agri.
And lastly, for our fifth panel, 1, 2, 3, Cell Agri.
Cell Agri. Ayan, and that concludes the first day of our exhibit week. Grabe no, first day pa lang, ang dami ng pinakita sa atin ng UP Cells. But sit tight because there's many more in store for us. Right, Angelo?
Right, Amy. And today, October 10, 2021, marks the opening of our exhibit week, Bio-Symposia Day 1. And tomorrow, October 11 until October 15, 2021, we will be releasing our bio-information via our social media accounts, in which we'll relay more facts and other details regarding cell agriculture and bioindustrial revolution. And for our last day on October 16, 2021, we will be holding our Bio-Symposia Day 2 to further delve into cell agriculture as we talk about its amalgamation, challenges, and opportunities with our speakers from UP Los Baños, Philippines, and Cellular Revolution, England, United Kingdom. We will be also holding our Hainayan 2021 Selpukan ng Talino at Galing, which is an online quiz contest for college students, putting the participants' knowledge and understanding in different fields and subfields of biology to a test. We are looking forward to your participation in our upcoming events.
Again, I am Amy Lituania.
And I am Angela Linco.
This is Bioindustrial Revolution, Envisioning Food Sustainability through Cellular Agriculture. See you next week, and you may now leave the Zoom meeting and the Facebook live stream. Thank you.
Thank you.